What's going on, everybody? Welcome to our presentation. We're really excited. We've been wanting to do this for a long time, so we're really excited to be part of GDC. I'm Ahmed, Abdullah. It's my brother, Khalil, and we're going to tell you about our journey to get on consoles. And we're going to have a good time. You know, we're also, hopefully, you can learn something from things that we've learned and maybe things that work well for us and also our mistakes as well. So really excited to go through this presentation with y'all. Let's do it. So who are we? Again, so I'm Ahmed. So I'm the younger brother. You're older, like
I'm the veteran of the team.
he's a veteran by about a year and a half. So you can see there, that's the circa 90s over there, us playing consoles on Nintendo, playing a little Mario. But we've been playing games our whole lives, something we love doing. And from very young, we always loved building games as well. We've kind of found time during the week as we couldn't play games during the school week to build our own. So that was our workaround. So we always wanted to be developers. And the thing that we found was just, it was really hard to know what that really meant, what it meant to go on that journey to actually become developers. And we loved consoles. So specifically, we wanted to be on consoles. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about, you know, how we kind of became these two little guys playing Nintendo to actually being console developers. I'm going to the next slide here. So that was us, but maybe tell them about Decoy Games, our company.
Yeah, so, you know, fast forward, 30-something years or so, now we're Decoy Games. We are our own self-published indie studio. We're actually launching our first game, Swimsanity. It's built, right now the team consists of myself, my brother, and also shout out to Chris Venn, who does all of our visual art for our game right now. Someone that we've actually known since childhood, I think since preschool or so, right?
Very young, yes.
Yeah, very young. And we just kind of got together and built this thing from the ground up, right? Just kind of self-taught. As we saw there, self-taught. So me and my brother taught ourselves how to do development through like YouTube, Google, basically from scratch, understanding the intricacies and the beginnings of game development. Meanwhile, Chris, who was just a graffiti artist, he's actually self-taught. We showed him how to use the software, and then from there, just kind of year after year, he just built his skills. We're also self-funded, so everything that we've done, everything that we've funded for ourselves has actually come from us working part-time. We'll get into that a little bit later in the presentation. And then the last thing that we're also going to tap on a bit here is the fact that we're self-published. So we are bringing our own game to market, and we want to tell you guys exactly how you can publish your own game.
So this will actually be a talk that ranges from, if you're a beginner or if you've even been in the publishing or self-publishing business. So hopefully the things that we can touch as well. But so what was our game? So our debut game is Swimsanity. You might have heard it before. It's a multiplayer underwater shooter with competitive and cooperative game modes. You can play online or locally. We'll be launching with cross-play as well. We've been fortunate enough to win a few awards, going to different like indie showcases and things like that. It will come out on all platforms. In August. If we fast forward time to real time, that would actually be tonight when you're watching this live. So we'll see if this all worked or not. But I want to show you guys some gameplay. You guys check it out and let us know what you think here. All right, and that's Swimsanity. We're done. All right, no.
Can we edit in our own cheers?
Yeah. No, that was our Swimsanity coming out August 7th. The game looked nothing like that when we first started, so that's kind of the whole part of our talk as well. And we want to talk about kind of these 5 steps it took us to get to that point for our first game. So the first thing we'll talk about is making a good game, one of my favorite subjects. It's so simple, and why do we talk about making a good game, but we'll go over that. Number 2 is preparing for visibility. So talking about starting a company, getting your game out there so people can see it, what that all means. Number 3 is showcasing and networking, something that we love to do. We're just very people. We just love interacting with people. So that's our brand. So talk about how that worked for us and how that can work for you. And then we'll talk about console approval and development, some of the gotchas that hit us and might hit you as well. And then building a go-to-market strategy, which is very important to make sure you have a plan going into market. But very first, number 1 is making a good game. So what does it mean to make a good game?
So, I mean, it's funny because it's such a simple thing, right? You say, of course, I'm trying to make a good game, but that goes so much deeper than just developing a good game. So let's go into some of that. And let's start with how we made what we consider a good game. So as he said before, the Swimsanity you see today is not the Swimsanity that it started, right? So this is a journey. It's a long run thing. So about, 10 years ago, I started with Swimsanity, the Adventures of the Scuba Diver. It was just a simple flash game where the scuba diver tried to swim down to the bottom of the ocean, collect gold, and bring it back up to his boat when these horribly designed sea creatures would try to attack him.
Your art was impeccable.
My art, yeah, it looked a lot better in my head when I was making it, but
gotta start somewhere.
Yeah, gotta start somewhere. So yeah, this was just like the basic fundamentals of what became Swimsanity today. Fast forward about 2 years later, we started working on the XNA framework. Along this way, we started to really understand what game development really meant, what it felt like to use at least a framework of an engine, add like physics and stuff to our game. Chris just started jumping on board around this time. He was just getting used to doing digital art. So everything still, while it definitely was not as bad as my art, things still just kind of didn't really mesh together.
Right. You could see improvements here, but I mean, clearly some issues you guys are probably pointing out. The HUDs are basically in the middle of gameplay. The background looks like it's on the foreground. It doesn't even look underwater. Sorry, I'm bashing Chris and stuff here, but he'll have a good kick out of this. But yeah, the art got better, but it still just wasn't there, right? So what would be the next phase here?
So, and we talked about the journey, right? So actually still within XNA, our experience started to get better. You see this is about 5 years from the start. And we just, year after year, we kind of picked up our skills, kind of recrafted our game. You can see it kind of starting to take life a bit here. You see like some, a little bit better background design, some characters kind of popping a bit more. And so basically this is like our skills are kind of starting to develop as game developers.
Yeah, and at this point, the background was still a little busy, still HUDs were kind of on the screen, but this build was actually good enough to start getting the console, attention to actually have us be self-published. So at this point too, what you don't see in the screenshot is that our gameplay loop was really a lot more crisp at this point. It played a lot like Swimsanity, it just didn't look like Swimsanity at this point, but this is before we jumped on Unity, right? Started teaching ourselves Unity. Yeah.
And then, we started, as you said before, we got Unity license actually from a convention that we won essentially an award to give you Unity license. And from there, that's when we really started developing what Swimsanity was today, combining our experience with also the power of the engine that allowed us to kind of leverage, some of the great things that Unity brings to games today. So this is the Swimsanity that you see now. And let's talk about exactly what were the steps that we took along this journey to make the decisions that became, what a lot of people are, playing right now, Swimsanity. What decisions really went into making that good game? So one of the things that we say first and foremost, especially for any beginner developers who are watching this, it's never too early to get started, right? So especially today, back when we started, it was really hard to find like game engines that are accessible by developers. Nowadays, you have like Unity, Unreal, Game Maker. I can keep going on, but there are free demos for these engines that you can download and just start messing around with today. Find the one that suits you best and really just start from anything simple. Even if you are getting like a block moving across the screen, that's a goal that you want to keep building on these goals and moving forward.
So one thing, and the reason why we start with make a good game, because to be honest, this is where a lot of things fall off, right? Because you got to make a good game to sell a good game. I think that's something that we need to be more honest with ourselves when entering this industry, that maybe our game just wasn't good enough. So how do we get it to that point? For us, as Khalil said, getting honest game testers and getting feedback was really key for us to make sure we iterate on that. For us, it was friends and family just to start, and they were pretty brutal in the beginning, but it helped a lot. One thing we say a lot is within your game community, there's always stuff, whether it's like meetup.com or different things where you can find Discord. There's so many people that are just willing to play games. So if you think it's something that you need to pay for in order to get people to play, I don't think that's true. I think there are a lot of people that are willing to just play and just want to enjoy playing games. And if anything, they feel almost honored to be in that prototype phase.
Yeah, and I really want to hammer on this one because the whole game testers thing, I do feel like that's where a lot of indies fall short. They play their own games, and once their own game is good enough to them, they're like, oh, this game is definitely good enough. Now let's try to market it and sell it. Make sure that you are actually testing with other individuals who have unbiased opinions, but also taking their feedback to heart, right? So if someone does not have a positive opinion of your game, it's not always, oh, he doesn't know it, he doesn't understand my game, he doesn't really understand the art of what I'm trying to do. You have to take, especially if you are in the business of trying to sell your game to others, you have to take the feedback of others as a group, somebody like a survey, and apply it to what you do, right? Be honest with yourself, be honest with the feedback that you're getting back. Basically just have an unbiased view. That circular kind of flow of testing a game and then developing it is really what, makes a good game at the end.
Absolutely. So, okay, we have a good game. We're good. Now we have to prepare for visibility. So we have to get into the industry. So another step that I feel like is very key here is when you're doing this, we're starting a business, right? So if you're selling something in any industry, you have to start a business because once you sell it, you have to pay taxes. All these things go into that. For some reason, I think as gamers, we really feel like it's maybe we have this pass to not have to do the business part, but it's very key. It really is something that will establish how your game sells and how well you can get into the game industry. And also, especially if we're talking about consoles, once you're dealing with those type of businesses, I mean, they really want to deal with you from a business perspective, not necessarily someone that might look this as a hobby. So one of the things we always tell people to do, and for us, is we create our business plan very early and set our expectations very early. And one of the expectations for us was making sure that we can develop the game while having a good life balance with the game development and make sure that we, have money to just live. So what we did is we were working full-time jobs while working for a majority, I'd say about 90% of the development of Swimsanity. Make sure we had full-time jobs. We worked at nights, weekends, and that gave us the ability to make sure that we didn't feel like we were rushing ourselves. We made sure budget was really pushing us in decisions. Give us time to just understand business, not just with the game, but also in the jobs that we worked at, the corporate jobs we worked at, and allowed us to kind of build our brand today. So what that means for you, for us, that was something that we knew we just had to have patience and prepare ourselves for the long run. But it really gave us kind of this peaceful state of mind to be able to do both and also feel like we're growing up with our game as well. So having that business plan put together is really key. And that was ours to make sure that we were able to kind of get into the different conventions and showcase the way that we felt we're comfortable and want to present our title.
Speaking specifically to the game developers of the room, I just want to say that you actually have a skill that while it is crafted for game development, you have a skill that you can take to other industries and, work and get your foundation down because things are just a lot easier once you can fund yourself, not just for your game, but just paying rent and stuff like that. As soon as you start crashing because, you don't have the means to, make a living and stuff, your game journey will actually burn out way sooner than you want to. So just specifically talking to game developers, don't feel that you need to have a game development job right when you start, right? Yep. Like we said, we worked in sales. I did sales for healthcare, which I would personally, has nothing to do with my personal interests, but it laid the foundation for me to then focus on my game on nights and weekends.
Had us understand business really well too.
That too.
So that taking sales and things like that. So as you said, make a business plan. That's something you definitely want to do early. That means how do you establish your business? Are you an LLC, a partnership, things like that? Learning about how your teams will be funded, learning about taxes, learning about what your goals are, defining what your success is. Success is different for everybody. I mean, success really depends on where you are, where your happiness is with your title. Knowing what that is in the beginning will help you define where you should be putting your game, who you should be talking to. I listed some books up here that I read personally that really helped me. Some great stuff there that are really gaming focused, and some that are just strictly just talking about how to start a business. As I said, I feel like it's really important to go outside of just gaming as far as business starting, because a lot of things you might miss if you just think about game development, because even some successful games out there, they're the game developers, but really the publishers handling all the business parts. So if you're doing both, you need to make sure you understand what those publishers understand, and they understand really the business part as well. Just one quick thing too about kind of once you start visibility is also to make sure that your social media, your press kit and things are all set up, because you want to make sure all this hard work you put into preparing your business is visual to the consoles, to other press or anything. That'll just give you more legitimacy and open doors for you.
All right, so that's a perfect segue into showcasing and networking, right? So you have your good game, you got your business plan created.
We're looking good.
You're looking good, right? We have a press kit. So online, we have like a trailer, we have a demo. Now we just need to show it off to people. This is one of our favorite parts is, once you have everything together, now let's start to show it, let's move around and show it off to people. I know some of this stuff is a little bit more difficult during these times, but we're pretty confident these times these convention stuff will eventually come back. But there's also a lot of like digital platforms that allow you to share your game. For us, we built a lot of our brand off going to various showcases, right? You guys know some of the big ones out there, like your PAX East, PAX West, E3, DreamHack, things like that. But there's also local conventions and stuff too that you can go to, right? So depending on where you are, you'd be surprised what you can find when you just search, local game convention, local meetups. Especially if you're just getting started and you just need, like 10 to 50 people to come and try out your game and get some really genuine feedback. Conventions are really good for getting people to test and play your game, getting eyes on your game from, important influencers, YouTubers, podcasters. These guys always go to these conventions and whatnot. And then also connecting to like the distributors and whatnot in the industry. One of the things with us is all the distributors that we actually connected with, Nintendo, Xbox, and Sony, we met them at conventions, but we actually met them at very small conventions, right? So we didn't meet them at your like E3 or for like Microsoft, we met them at a local convention in Boston that's actually held in a gym. We met our Nintendo contact at a small convention in Harlem that might not be any more than maybe 300 people.
Yeah, Game
so.
Does the Color.
Yeah.
It's a great convention. Only about 500 people. Is right in Harlem. That started a great relationship with us with Nintendo. As cool as saying, it was just like those small conventions really were big for us to actually build personal relationships with the publishers, the distributors of the platforms. And since we are self-published, that was very key for us. We need to have a very one-to-one contact from a business perspective, understanding how to get into the market.
And the other thing I just want to add is that a lot of opportunities are easier if you're actually going out there and networking. And that doesn't always mean that you're flying around the world or anything like that. But instead of, just sitting behind your computer and hoping people come to your game, you have to be aggressive, right? So if you got to send emails, you got to call numbers, you got to go shake hands. If you don't go out and show people that you want them to play your game, people are they're not likely to just come to you and have this like quick viral turnaround. You want to make sure you're doing that outreach on your own.
Other thing too, we talk about building your brand. For us, we always want to have a very consistent brand. We just really love interacting with people. So you see a lot of pictures here. We're always taking pictures with cosplayers. We always make sure we're running tournaments. We're really interactive. We found that consistency, we wanted to make sure that was always there, whether it was a big convention or we're just throwing our TV on one single table. Wanted to make sure the experience was always the same. We found that the publishers and the consoles were actually very keen to seeing how we actually took that approach. And they would state to us, they said, honestly, we just really like how you guys present yourself. We really like your brand going there. And that was important for us, and we're glad that kind of worked out. So building your own brand, what that is for you, as Khalil said, there are a lot of digital showcases now that have a lot of eyes on it and definitely things that people pay attention to. But whatever works for you is something you want to make sure you're consistent with.
So yeah, just to review, one of our recommendations, like I said, there's a lot of ways to do this. One thing that works for us was going to conventions with goals in mind. What are you trying to get out of the convention? Do I want to go to this convention so I can test play my game and get critical feedback? Am I trying to go to the convention to get media? So what do I need to do to attract media? Have goals in mind, have strategies of how you want to actually accomplish those goals. And then, like I said, a huge takeaway: small conventions, small showcases, small digital showcases. Don't turn away from those just because you see that they have small numbers. Numbers do not mean everything, right? Some of these have small numbers, but important influencers. Some of these have small numbers of people who are definitely going to play your game, right? So if you have 10 people who love your game, are going to play your game, grab those 10 people so they can share what they're following.
Yeah, and just getting that one person, like we have people that just would play our game for a real long time, and that really have tested us. And it's close to champions. That's a great segue into our next part, because when you do make these connections with the consoles, now there's a process of make sure you get approval and the development of consoles. And we do want to talk about kind of a few things, the stories that we had as far as building these connections. And as Khalil said, having a champion is the most important thing, I think, and make sure of building kind of towards a successful release. So what is a champion? For us, it's someone that is within that business, whether it's Nintendo, PlayStation, Xbox, Steam, that basically really likes your game and can have some pull in meetings to say, yeah, you guys, we should push this title. It takes time to try to find who that person is. It's always good to have multiple if you can. But having a champion within these different businesses will really get you to different places. It might get you in different showcases. It might also get you into different things that are going through release. For us, kind of one of the things we had was going into like the Navy showcase and building these champions to actually get us into these different available areas. The other thing too is when you have a champion, it might be someone at a different company, and people move a lot. So we've had people where you want to make sure when you're talking to them, you don't really know where they will end up being. We have people that are now our champions, or we just talked to them and got along with them really well, that worked at a different company. So building these relationships is very key, especially when you're self-publishing, because these are the people that you're going to be working with and getting to approval there.
And I mean, a champion doesn't have to be somebody who's working with the company, right? It might be a person who runs a convention. And while you're going and showcasing, you go up because you see them walking around, you go up and shake their hand and say, hey, I'm Khalil, I work at Decoy Games. Thank you for having me at your convention. I'd like to work and, get that conversation going. Build those genuine friendships, those genuine connections that become genuine business connections. It's kind of, they're both sides of the table on that one. So.
Yeah, so, and that's key because you can always submit online to get approval on these consoles. But as you know, I kind of compare it to submitting a resume to a company like a monster. Like, it might just hit the bottom of the deck. So I always feel like it's going to take time to figure out a strategy of how to meet these people either face-to-face or just in a different way where you can leave a lasting impression, where they either see your game or see you. Those are things that would be very helpful. So that's the approval part. I just want to talk a little about development. There's always things that you can't talk about with console development, but there are always those sorts of things that you definitely want to make sure you understand. When you're developing now for multiple platforms, even though you're using something like Unity, there's always things you want to make sure you need to be prepared to develop specifically for different platforms. A lot of these things go into the certification process that a lot of console developers know, that it basically you need to go through testing to make sure your stuff is following a lot of their guidelines. If you do not plan this within your release cycle, this can really screw up things for you. This process could take long for us. Our first time going into it was pretty long for us because it was just a new experience. But making sure that you have that all planned is really key, is something that you want to make sure is there. And you want to make sure, since we're using Unity, one of the tips I have for Unity developers is any of the assets that you're pulling off the store and going into your product, make sure that they are console compatible. Make sure that the support is there, because if you might put yourself into a corner, if you might, something that ran really good on PC might not run very well on one of the consoles. And you want to make sure that support is there. The more complex your game is, the more you might, have these different things come up. So a lot of things you got to handle, a lot of hats you got to wear in order to release on all platforms.
Yeah, so just to review on that, find a champion where you can for your game across any organization, not just consoles, but anything that can help. Try to find you that champion, make a genuine connection. Don't just kind of, use these deals. Make a genuine connection with that champion and then kind of utilize that for your own business purposes. Like I said, plan for console certification. The majority of console development is that certification. Chances are the actual core of your game will actually be the same from console to console. but the specific guidelines that you need to hit to like following these certification requirements for each console is where you're going to spend most of your console development.
The one tip I can say about certification that we learned is, and this is pretty consistent across all of them, is like when you're doing these things, there are SDK requirements. So these things might get upgraded, and you want to make sure you submit these on time, especially if you're developing for multiple platforms. Making sure you understand what that minimum requirement is in your third-party tools. They are able to support those.
Let's talk about
is
SDK
very key.
versions.
So SDK versions is very key. For us, since we are like an online game that's cross-play, we have tools that handle voice chat. We have tools that handle our architecture for the online play. We have tools that handle our controller. To make sure those are all lined up for all platforms, it's very key to know that consistent, because that can change your release date. That can change a lot of things. So that's one tip I'd say if I would take away from what we're doing is to make sure those are always lined up. So make sure you have consistent releases across all platforms you're trying to release on the same day. All right, so we have a good game. We got a business. We've showed it, and we have now console approval. And now we need to go to market strategy. This is also another thing that we say you got to take a good amount of time to make sure you have, because once you complete a game, just like any business, you want to make sure that the game has time to get out to the public. It has time for people to consume it, understand it. And a lot of times, I know you've been working so many years on this game or whatever time, you just want to get out to market. You want to make sure you do take time so people can know what the game is. So maybe talk about a little bit our marketing strategy, how we did that or how we're doing that right now.
Yeah, so, and we knew that, especially being a first-time developers with our first game, regardless of how well received our game was, in order to have the game played nationally or globally, really, we needed to set aside enough time for us to spread that message to people. And we knew that with our current following, we would not be able to spread that message ourselves. So one of the things that we did is we leveraged console marketing, or just leveraged partners in general. So some examples of what we did, we reached out to Nintendo early on and actually caught them right on time for their Spring Nindy Showcase. That was broadcasted to millions of people around the world. We did specific console events such as the ID at Xbox Pre-PAX event. Also got involved with ID at Xbox Summer Spotlight. But reach out to these console guys early, especially if you have dev kits, and find out exactly where and if you fit into their marketing plans. There's actually a set amount of things that they will give you by default, but depending on what your relationships are with them, depending on your game and how it fits with their brand, they'll give you extra things as well. Also, leveraging marketing partners in general. As you guys probably know, it's not just about the console guys, right? There's certain, whether they're streaming organizations, maybe third-party organizations, don't be afraid to reach out to these guys as well, because they actually have a lot of leverage in the industry also. Especially if you're a small team like us who doesn't have a humongous following, leverage other people's following so that it can then boost yours.
Right, and we use examples like Razer and Unity. So our Razer products are compatible with our game using the Razer Chroma parts of the product, and as long as we're using dev kits that they provided and having the game, they want to showcase that. They want to be able to promote that. Same with Unity. I mean, you built a game on Unity. If they think it's great, they're going to go share through their channels as well.
This is our favorite bit of advice, but do not be afraid to ask for anything. Literally, if you had a camera following us for everything that we've done, the repeated pattern is we ask for something way out of the ballpark
all the time
to someone who's organizing an event. We'll go up to them and be like, hey, we want our own room for our own tournament. We want 100-inch screen, actually 200-inch screens. We want our own announcer. And they're like, okay, we're actually going to give you a table with 2 TVs, and we'll put your tournament on our front page. We're like, all right, cool, we'll take it.
Yeah.
Always go the full mile, and if they scale back to half a mile, take that half mile. But don't be afraid to ask. The worst thing they can say is a no, and a no will never end your journey.
That is, if you remember anything, please remember that we ask for just the most ridiculous things, and sometimes we've gotten some pretty awesome stuff. So as we were saying before, take advantage of the console marketing. That's just, a lot of things are provided by default. I think a lot of developers might not know that once they're there, but just make sure you plan and ask. Plan that time for the certification. That's very key. And also, we talk about once you want to get your game out there, you want to get reviews and get keys out there. Don't ignore the small press. Building that hype within a small press actually has the bigger press start looking at that as well, and that can really have a lot of impact. So make sure you spend time for that.
And then just kind of wrapping this up a bit, this is an iterative process, right? So don't be afraid if you're on step 4 to go back to step 3 or even go all the way back to step 1, right? This, just like development, chances are when you're developing something, you got to compile it multiple times before it actually works. Don't be afraid to go back to the drawing board, start over again, and go, go in different paths. This is an iterative, long-term process.
And that is it for the journey. Thank you guys so much for being a part of this. Just want to let you guys know we do have a Discord for Swimsanity. We love talking to developers up there, sharing our
anybody,
talk to anybody or anyone, just really interacting, as we said. Follow us on social media, Decoy Games, Twitter, Facebook, or also Instagram, Decoy Games _official. It's been amazing. I guess tonight, in the future,
we're playing Swimsanity tonight.
Yeah, so love to play with you guys, and thank you so much.